And thank you for joining us today for today's reports interest group. You requested we talk about simple reports, so that is what we are going to talk about today. We're going to take a tour of the module. We'll look at the layout, the workflow you may use. We'll also mention some of the current issues we face when we use the simple reporter, and why it might be limiting to us, or at least what we're used to. And we'll create some new reports and run them. For the live look, when we're looking at the production server, think about a type of report you want to look at, and then what you might use as the displays, or what we'll filter in the report, and then we'll see if we can build it using the simple reporter. I did not put a slide in, but my name is Britta Dorsey. I am the Development Support Administrator for Evergreen, Indiana. Hello. So that is me. Okay. So they call it the simple reporter, but it might not actually be that simple. There are some limitations and bugs that we currently face in the new interface. Some of the things we know we can do, or it seems like we can do, it seems like we can create templates more easily. It's more easy to understand the filter options, what we can choose from, and what to choose. There isn't really what I'm calling a reports rabbit hole to fall down. And it feels like we have more control over the filters we use. Some of the stuff we can't do, at least right now, there are no folders to sort templates into. We cannot import our old templates from the main reports module into Simple Reporter. I did find we cannot search for item notes and alerts. So if we were wanting to do something like that, we would need to use the regular reports module. Some of the filters for billing, and I think even like for circulation, they don't work as they should right now. And like I just said, I don't believe some of the filters for circulation that are like the bulk dates. There are some that say circ stats like for the last 3 years. I don't think those work correctly right now. Couple things again to remember: take the simple reporter with a grain of salt. It's still in development, and according to those who like in the development community, it still has a ways to go. And the primary reports module is being updated to the new Angular language. It will be released eventually when it is finished. The big thing to remember is the simple reporter is not replacing the original reports module. Think of it like a supplement to the reports module. And even though it does seem like there's a lot more things we can't do, I mean, we can still do quite a lot. To access Simple Reports, we're going to navigate to the administration menu and then click on the Simple Reports link. Upon first loading the module, you'll be in the My Reports tab. This is where you will see previously created reports, when they were created, last edited or run, if they're recurring, and if so, when they'll next be run. This is also where you start the process of creating a new report. But before we do that, let's take note of the grid options. Besides the selection of available columns, we have the same grid options menu as the staff catalog. We can hide columns directly from the drop-down menu or choose manage columns in a pop-up. We can alter the width of the columns, giving more space to those areas that don't have a set length of data. We can also manage the actions menu, but it isn't really necessary since there are only 3 options to choose from in this tab. And as always, we can change the number of rows that are visible by default and move between pages if there are more reports than visible rows. Okay, let's start building our first report. We'll look at the production server a little bit when talking about the display and filter fields, but the rest will be slide-based. But don't worry, we're going to build a template live afterward. Step 1, click New. Who knew? Step 2, next we'll want to select the type of report we're wanting to run. The circulation, that focuses on library circulation. Collections reports focus on library collections, both bibliographic and item. Weeding reports can be used for collection maintenance, whether it's weeding or inventory. Patron reports are for library patron accounts. And billing and payments transaction summary is used for monetary transactions. We're going to, for the examples in the images, we're going to use the weeding report type, but we're going to look at each when we take a live look. So once we've selected our report type, we need to select our display fields, filters, and output options. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. So I'm going to click New in Simple Reports and select Weeding first. There are the display fields that we can choose from are separated into categories. We have the most common fields, fields that are specifically for date information, inventory, call number, location or unit, and then we have all fields. So if we were to click on common fields, these are what were, I think, recommended as the most commonly used fields for weeding. So we have, of course, circulating library or system, the owning library, when the item was last circulated, which is something that we definitely look at when we read material, and then item-specific information like the barcode, item status and shelving location, circulation modifier, and things like that. And of course, we get into the bib information like title, author, and bib record ID or database ID. Date fields, this is kind of just the specific ones. Of course, we have when it was active or created, when it was last edited, things like that. And then libraries would have the specific for circulating and owning library display fields. And then all fields is just everything in these fields just put here in alphabetical order. And then if we want to look at, let's go with circulation, we can see they kind of change. So common fields for circulation would be circulation start, date, shelving location, of course. Item field specifically would be, again, item barcode, shelving location, things like that. So you kind of get the idea of what that the display fields are used specifically for, or how the display fields are organized. So let's go back here. Okay. So actually, let's go back, sorry. Okay, so if we were to select a couple fields here, we can see as we select them that they appear here in the field display order area. This is when we can remove them if we choose by clicking the negative circle here, or we can just uncheck them from the display fields area. We can also use these arrows, the up and down arrows, to move them in the display order. So, so we have the ability before we download a CSV or Excel file, we can organize the display of how we want our information to appear. So the next step we want to do once we've selected our display fields is the output order. This is also where we can change the order for the display fields. The section is the same one that's found in the display fields. We have the arrows here, but we also have the ability to now sort the fields by specific field. So if we wanted to sort the barcode by ascending or descending order, we can do that. If you prefer to have the larger circulation totals at the top, you can change that. It really gets into specifics if you're really into that. Otherwise, you can sort if you choose in the spreadsheet once you've run the report. Similar to the display fields, we have the filters separated into suggested filters, common fields, and then for the weeding, we have date fields, inventory, item and bib record specific, or unit, and then of course all fields. So let's go back to the live and take a look at those. So let's go back to the weeding. Notice that since I was changing from the circulation report type to weeding and we had already started building a report, it's asking us, or it's telling us we already started creating a report. If we switch to a different report type, it's going to remove everything that we've done. Are we sure we want to do that? For this, yes. So this is a nice warning in case you accidentally press something you didn't want to. So let's go to filters. So we have, of course, suggested filters. the circulating library, circulation last year, things like that. The major difference between the filters and display fields is that you will need to select what you're filtering by or the value of the filter. For example, if we want to show those items that last circulated or were created prior to 3 years ago, we can select that filter. So if we selected the filter last circulated or item created date, time, and then we had to go into the operator, and then we chose before because we want to select or filter the items that circulated or were created before the 3 years that we chose for this report. And then from the dropdown, since we're going before a certain date, we will select that date in the past, most likely 3 years ago, maybe. It depends on how your collection development policy is when you weed of how long you wait until an item is when you're able to remove an item from the collection. So since we're choosing a date, we'll go ahead and just go 3 years in the past, and we're going to go with March 1st of 2020. We don't really have the ability to order the filter fields. It's kind of as they're added. For this report, I'm going to make sure I include the item deleted filter because we don't want to include items that haven't circulated since 2020 because they've already been deleted. So that's usually an important field or filter to add when you are dealing with items or even patrons, whether they are deleted or active. I'm going to include the filter for the owning library, and it looks like we can select the system level and include the descendants, or select a branch level and choose the ascendants. When weeding, the item status theoretically will be available, but I'm going to add that filter at just because or as a formality. I've also added the filter for shelving location. Depending on the size of your collection, you'll likely want to separate reports by shelving location. If you don't want to separate the reports, it might be better to anyway, so the report doesn't get so large it bogs down the system and has to be manually stopped. Question is, can we add more than one shelving location? Let's take a look. I'm also writing this down so I can remember to look at it.
You theoretically should be able to use the control key to select them. It's not quite as visible.
Right now it doesn't. Oh.
Yeah.
Let's see. If we change it to enlist, we can. So by default, it's just equal. So then you just select it from just a drop-down selection. But if we change the operator to enlist, then that allows us the ability to select it and then add it, and then go back in and select another one.
Perfect.
So yes, we can. My selections right now are a little limited because I'm logged in under the consortium workstation, and we only have technically one shelving location. That's okay. Okay. So I do want to mention there is a bug right now that we cannot filter by circulation modifier in weeding reports. We can display it, but we cannot filter by the modifier. So we would have to filter by shelving location to possibly narrow it down to that, or just remove them post report being run. Now once we've set our filters and our display fields, and remember, if you notice, we can do that in any order. We don't have to do the filters first and then the display fields. We can do them whichever. So as we build our filters, then we can decide that we need to display certain other fields, so the information will show up where we want it to. But once we have finished that, we just need to decide what type of output formats we want for our report. By default, CSV and HTML are selected. I'm going to be honest, I have never used pivot tables, nor have I any idea how they work. But since CSV files can work like normal Excel files, I usually just leave it as is and work with it like that. So we choose whether Excel, CSV, HTML, and then we also have the bar or line chart options. Next, we need to decide if this is a recurring report. Since we're setting up a weeding report, I don't feel that this is something that needs to be done, at least for this example. So I'm going to leave that blank. I do want to run the report now. But if I wanted to run the report later, say it's going to be a large data set and you want to run it overnight, you can select to have it run later. You'll want to select the date from the calendar drop down to do so. And then the last thing you need to enter is your email address. Unfortunately, the email address is not automatically filled when you are first creating the report, like the regular reports module. However, it should stay there if you choose to run it again or I think edit the report. You can't run a report in Simple Reports until you've named it. You can name it whatever you want. If you plan to use it again or use it as a template to clone, you may wish to make it a generic name like items with 0 circulations since date, kind of like what we do already with the reports module. Once you've done that, you just click Save and Schedule Report. So after you save and or run the report, you'll be taken back to the My Reports tab. If it says saved successfully, you'll see the green toast button confirming it saved successfully. You can now see, based on your visible columns, your report's information. You can switch to the My Outputs tab, but the report won't show up there until it's actually finished running. A good thing to keep in mind is that Simple Reports, like the original reports, are saved at the user level, not at the workstation level. Now that the report has completed, we are in the My Outputs tab. We can see it here listed in the grid. In this example, we can see the report name, the finish time, and then those output types we selected before we ran said report. Clicking on the HTML will, instead of opening in a small window, it will open in a new tab. The CSV, of course, or the Excel spreadsheet will download the CSV file of that report based on your browser's settings. If we do go back to the My Reports tab, we can now see the last time that report was run. Okay, question. For those of us with Library IQ, are there reports or types of reports you suggest we use one or the other, Simple Reports versus Library IQ? I cannot recommend anything at this time. I think we're still in such the early ages of using Library IQ that we're still learning what we can pull from that. I think it would be a good idea to look at Library IQ and see what you can pull from there. And then whatever you can't grab from Library IQ, look at the Simple Reports or the General Reports function.
You're going to need to run anything that has patron information from Evergreen, whether it be from the Simple Reporter or from the traditional reporter. Library IQ patron information has to do with demographic stuff as opposed to actual patron information. So that's going to all need to be from Evergreen, whichever of the reporters you prefer. The other thing, you can, of course, collections are really where Library IQ shines in terms of collection analysis and circulation as well, once you verified that those are set up correctly in terms of like shelving locations and things like that. So that would be something that I would spend a fair amount of time in Library IQ checking to see that if those things meet your needs, because those also get kind of complex in Evergreen. Of course, you run the report, but then you also have to do all the manipulation in the report output to figure out what actually that data means for you. So I would go patron, Evergreen, collections, Library IQ, and circulation somewhere in the middle there. That if I was making a decision, that's how I would prioritize it.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I really appreciate that. So selecting Edit from the Actions menu from the My Reports tab will allow you to make changes to the report you've made. You can change all of the display fields, filters, output type, and even the name. It will not create a new template based on those changes. It will just update that report. Cloning the report will make you enter a new name, and it will first keep all of the display fields, filters, and anything else that you set. But since we are cloning the report, which was created in this example from the weeding report type, the new report will also be a weeding report. If you're wanting to make a different report type, you will have to select new instead of clone. But once you've cloned it, after you enter a new report name, you'll click confirm to be taken to the edit screen to customize the new report. Eventually, you may have a long list of reports saved. If you're looking for a particular report, you can use filters to sort and search your list. I mean, it's a little difficult to filter 2 reports in this example, but we'll try to get creative. So this icon will open up the operator for the filter. From the drop down, select how you want your value to be filtered. Do you want the filter to filter out those report names that are an exact match or contains your value? There are a number of options to choose from. For this example, we'll just choose contains and enter since date for the value.
And while Britta is applying that filter, this is a good thing to keep in mind as well, that filtering and sorting, but filtering is really the thing that is pretty awesome in a lot of the new Angular interfaces. And this is the behavior that you will see in all of those. So if you practice it here in the simple reporter or in another interface, it's going to translate how you can do some Boolean filtering here and there, wherever.
Yeah, exactly. Once we've selected or entered our value, we will click Apply Filter, and that will show us our results. That little upside down pyramid has now changed to a pencil icon, and the filter is now highlighted to show that it is in use. You can see that the other report has disappeared because it did not contain since date in the title. If we want to clear the filter, we can select Filter again and choose the Clear Filter option. Now that we've learned how to create a new report, let's create a new one from scratch from one of the other report types. It may not, if we run it, it may not be complete by the time the interest group finishes today, but if you have any interest, I will be happy to send you the results of those. Okay, so let's refresh this. I'm going to just go back to the menu. I'm going to abandon any unsafe changes and click new. So did anyone think of any report type that they wanted to take a look at?
While you're also having a thought too, I'm going to completely derail it a little bit, maybe not. It is important to keep in mind that while these interfaces are new, they pull from the same database tables. And the reason that I say that is that some of the database tables that they pull from are convoluted. And specifically, I'm looking at the billings and payments transactions summary. And billing, any of you with more than a couple years in Evergreen, Indiana know that it's special beast. And so this is kind of one of those things where I balk internally every time I hear the word simple. It did not magically make something that was overly complicated less complicated. So keep in mind that if you struggle with some of these sources and headings in here, it isn't you. Just because it says it's simple, like Britta said on that slide, does not mean that it necessarily is. And if you're not understanding it, please don't think it's because you're incompetent. They are hard to understand.
It's not you, it's the module.
Exactly.
Okay, we have items in transit. We can take a look at that. So my guess is we'd want to run a report based on item status. So that would probably be under collections. So we're going to choose the collections report type. First, let's go to filters because I want to make sure we get that item status in. And then we also, of course, want to remember to add the item deleted filter and change that to false because we do not want to include items that happen to be deleted while they were in the status of in transit. And just we never want to include, we might never want to include item deleted unless you're running a report for them. Anywho, so okay, we have the item deleted. We want to filter by item status. So we're going to change the operator to enlist to get those options, and we're going to go to in transit and then click add. And then if we want to, well, yeah, we'll want to filter by, we can filter by owning library equals, and then we're just going to use our, because we know some of ours are probably in transit. I'm going to use our branch level, so I'm not going to click the ancestors or descendants buttons. Now that we have those first ones, let's go back to the display fields and see what we might want to display. We can probably display the shelving location of, we know the item status is going to be in transit, so it might be redundant to include that, but I mean, hey, why not? Let's include the item barcode. And then I know there were, maybe it's not in this report type. Yeah, title, author, if there is one, full call number. And
I do have a question. Is this meant to provide information other than what is already provided in the canned items in transit report, the transit report?
because that is accessible in circulation and list open transits.
So yeah, there are some things that we call interfaces, but they actually are canned reports. And you think about like your cash reports and things like that. So items in transit is one of those canned reports interfaces. And Britta, you may want to just open that up very briefly in another tab. Yeah. And so you can check either things that are coming to your library or that are going to are coming, are going out from your library or coming into your library, and see. So this would be one where you would say transits to Sheridan, and then you can adjust this date range in here.
Yeah.
And check on that.
And depending on how often you get your transits, if it's a daily, you may wish to put that into like thinking when you want to start looking at those that should have returned already, and then like base that on the date and then what you're looking for on the shelf. But you can use the send date definitely to.
With that said, you can build a report.
Yeah, absolutely.
In there. And a benefit of that would be, at least for me, is to have that output linked in an email, because I forget things all the time. And so if I'm getting an email, which is the first thing I look at in the morning, then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to check my transit. So that may be a helpful thing, whereas that interface is never going to provide you a notification that says, hey, you forgot to look at me.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah, reports are, even if you don't really use it for report, it's a great way to remind yourself to do something. We would check the hotspots, like overdue list every morning. And the report, I had it run, well, it showed me what they were checked out, but it reminded me to look at the bib record and say, okay, these are overdue, these need to be shut off and things like that. So there are reasons, other reasons besides running reports to use reports, sort of.
There are, and my experience has been to, I like to either have hyper specific reports or I like to have what I call omnibus reports that have way too much data for one task. But they're great jumping off points for a variety of things. Maybe I can use it for a shelf list. Maybe I can use it for a weeding list. Maybe I can use it for some collection analysis. If it has like pub date circs, blah, 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 and the whole thing. Or I can also see, what has a realistic barcode on it. Does that call number make any sense? So I like those like omnibus reports, unless it's something that I just want to know a specific statistical data point that I'm going to enter into something else. So hyper specific or huge data sets. That's my preference.
Okay, well then let's, another was to look at books on hold shelf at other libraries. So let's change that in transit filter value for item status to on hold shelf, if I remember how the alphabet works. So I'm going to change that and click add. Now we might not be able to filter by where the item is on the hold shelf. I might be completely wrong. Let's see. Well, that is something that we can display and work around when we look at the spreadsheet. But we're going to have the owning library so we can filter it down by owning, and that the item has a status of on hold shelf. It is not deleted. At least think if there are other.
I think you have to use the circulation source for to go that deep into holds behavior.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So would that be a display field, the circulating?
Yeah, I would do it as a display field.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's add circulating library. Let's go with circulating library shortening. Yeah. We have these displays. Let's go ahead and just change the output order a little bit. We're going to, actually it's kind of good as is. Let's go ahead and just move the barcode up to the top. And like other functions in Evergreen, when you are changing the order, the top will be what will be shown at the far left. Kind of like when we're messing with like the columns and item status, the column that is visible at the top will be on the far left. The one at the bottom will be far right. Okay, so let me think if there are other filters we need to think about. I don't think so. This should give us a good coverage, owning library item status, and then false for item deleted. I think that's good. Okay, let's go to output options. I'm just going to leave those as is. And this could be something if you wanted to do as a recurring report, up to you, but I'm going to add. And I think there is a way you can add multiple email addresses to a report staff, or is that just?
You can add multiple email addresses. I believe they're comma separated.
Okay.
So yeah. So you just comma, and I don't believe you have to put a space in there. Exactly.
Okay.
We're going to test it right now.
Yeah, let's find out.
Yeah. And that is the case in the traditional reporter as well.
Yeah. And notice how we haven't put a report name in yet, so we cannot click the save and schedule report. So let's put in items with in specific status. Okay. So we can go ahead and just save the report now without running it, or we can save and schedule. We're just going to go ahead and save and schedule so we can get that running. So now we have it is now visible in the My Reports tab. We have the date that it was created and last edited. And the next time it's going to run, it should be right now. We can either just refresh the page to see when it was last run, which usually means that it was complete. We can also go to My Outputs, and it will appear here once it's finished. So you can see it's not listed here yet because it hasn't had a finish time yet. So, but while we wait for that, we can look at, say, this report name that has already been created, new items with 0 circ after 3 months. So we can just edit this report and change the display order, display fields, filters, and things like that. And that will just edit this specific report or template, or we can just clone it. And you'll have that lovely clone in parentheses like we are used to. I'm just going to leave that there, confirm, and then you can see it takes us right into the edit simple report option. So I'm going to close that. It seems like simple reports take a little while longer. So it might just take longer depending on the size of the collection that the report is looking at and the specifics of the filters. So let's see if that will finish before. Does anyone have any other questions? Let's see. Bethany asks, is there a way to see how many holds were placed on items, ours and others during a particular month? Let's find out. So I would think that would be circulation. Let's see, item fields. Let me write that down too. So basically how many is it? So are you wanting to know how many items were captured for a hold by your patrons, whether it's your item or other libraries, or just how many hold patrons placed? Doesn't matter if they were captured yet or not. Okay. So how many holds did our patrons place this month? I have to assume, Bethany, the answer is yes. What we would use for that is the next question. So if we think about it, what would we would want to filter probably, or might it be in patrons? Let's look at the all fields available in patrons. Okay. This might be something more. Short answer at this moment in time, Bethany, I don't know. I have to assume that we can. I don't know how at the moment.
Yes. So there is a way to do that. There is not, I feel confident saying a template has not been created to do that, but the information is in the database and if it's in the database and there is a source, which there is, then you can create a template. And you is the general you, not you only, Bethany Gray. But also for us too, that would be actually a bit of a project to go in and figure that out, but it is definitely possible for sure. I would not do that though. I wouldn't do that in the simple reporter. That's my personal preference. I just have a much more comfort in the traditional reporter for as ungainly and ugly as it is, which we all know that it is ungainly and ugly. It also has everything tied in the way that you would expect it to, and it has more sources connected to it than the simple reporter does at this time.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. And thank you, Ruth.
And I am going to go in. I'm going to look for what I think is the most appropriate source. See if I can't get something before the top of the hour here, real quick.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe in the next like 30 seconds. Then just a second.
Are there any other questions? And please don't leave. Yeah, I have sending the attendance form link here momentarily. And also we have announcements. Okay, well, if you have questions, please keep typing them in the chat. Some announcements. We have a couple of webinars coming up. Tomorrow, Ruth is hosting Preparing to Use Evergreen Offline Mode to prepare library staff for being offline this weekend. It's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. The link is available in the slide, as well as I am putting it in the chat here. That's the link to register for the using Evergreen Offline Mode for tomorrow's webinar. Evergreen Communities Reports Interest Group happens on the last Wednesday of each month at 2 p.m. So the next one upcoming is April 26th at 2 p.m. Eastern. That might be something of interest. If you would like to learn more about how the reports and how they're talking about the simple reporter and things like that at the community level. They do usually have a specific topic, so doesn't mean you have to go to each reports interest group. I just wanted to put it out there in case you have an interest in going higher than just Evergreen Indiana.
And that's going to be during the conference.
Oh, yes.
So there should be a Zoom presence for that as well, but that is also going to be live and in person. Interest group, most of the time they meet online, but it will definitely be meeting in person on that day.
Upcoming other webinars, I have Basic Circulation in Evergreen on April 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern. Halted Transits in Evergreen on April 12th at 10 a.m. You can also register. The links to register are in the slide deck, as well as you can access the evergreenindiana.org calendar, and those are available there. The next barcode buying pool is occurring from April 17th to 23rd. Again, more information can be found on the calendar.
Just as a reminder on that too, that you can order, and this information has been confusing from our vendor. You can order library cards at any time. You need to order your item barcodes during that pool. You can put the order in at any time, but they're going to print them and bill you during the barcode buying pool. The other thing is that this is the last buying pool that we have on the calendar right now. I need to double check with procurement that they are extending that contract with PSI. They were negotiating and only extended it for 1 year from the last time. So we need to go in and figure out when the next one. It should be in July, but that is not verified yet.
And then on April 20th, I'll be hosting another Searching the Catalog webinar at 10 a.m. Eastern. And then on top of the offline mode webinar tomorrow, reminder that Evergreen Indiana servers will be down beginning Friday a.m. So please use offline mode or another form of circulation. You will be notified via the update listserv when it is back up. And then the Indiana State Library and Evergreen Indiana Admin Office will be closed Friday, April 7th.
I do have a thing for Bethany real quick. So if you go into the traditional reporter and there is the and you could approximate this probably in a simple reporter, but if you put in the template query bar, you put hold count by date range. And that's going to give you this. This is also available if you go to shared folders and then templates, and then there's a admin And then there is one that says holds down there. There's a folder, and that's where this actually is in there. Now, this one actually shows filled holds. You would use this as a starting point to clone this and then to update it. And so if you go in here, one of the filters is fulfillment date. So you could actually go into hold request, see wherever that the date for when it was actually placed is on there, and then you can use that as a filter. And I'd have to go through and actually
Yeah, I'm not seeing
see
it
that.
immediately,
but
it's there.
But we know it's there.
Yeah.
So request date. And then depending on how you wanted to do it, you could just I really like year plus month as a transform if I'm doing this as a monthly report. So I would just throw that in there, get rid of the fulfillment date filter, just remove that field. And then I have zero idea what this RHRR is in the source path here. But it's a way to get to the hold ID. If I just click on hold request, I see hold ID in there, and then you do account distinct, and that's going to show you. I would probably replace that with, get rid of that, whatever that are. That's an old thing, so I would want to update this anyway. Remove that field, and then I have the library where the pickup library, and then the hold ID. So anyway, quick and dirty. You can do it, and it's a pretty simple way to modify an existing template to get that information.
Yay, Ruth for the win.
Woo!
If there is nothing else, or if no one else has any questions, thank you guys so much for attending today. I appreciate it. Thank you to Ruth for helping out. And I hope you all learn something or are able to take something away from this. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.